Welcome to the Finding Financial Freedom podcast with the Frugal Physician, where Dr. Disha Spath will be your companion on this exciting financial adventure. Get ready to conquer debt, build wealth, and embrace a mindful spending lifestyle that will empower you to live life on your own terms.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Finding Financial Freedom with the Frugal Physician, where we dive deep into the smart strategies to build wealth. I'm your host, Dr. Disha Spath, and today I have the pleasure of chatting with Joy Sorensen Navar, President and founder of Navigate LLC. Joy is a national expert in student loan management, consulting with physicians and health systems across the country. She's dedicated her career to helping doctors regain control over their student loans and ultimately their lives. Joy has become a vital resource in navigating the often overwhelming world of student loans. Outside the office, she enjoys angling for panfish, embracing the simplicity and patience it teaches, qualities she brings to her professional life as well. Welcome, Joy. How are you today?
Hello, Dr. Spath. I'm feeling great. Thanks. I'm excited about our topic today.
Yes, I am too. The world of student loans can be so overwhelming, especially with the changes. And it's so nice to have someone with real world experience dealing with student loans and doctor finances for so long. I'm so honored to have you here.
My pleasure. Thanks for the invitation.
It's my pleasure. By the way, Disha works just fine.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So Joy, let's start at the beginning. What inspired you to focus specifically on student loans for physicians?
Disha, I was a financial advisor and I loved that work. I had my own practice. I'd tell my clients, I'll be with you until we both retire and or even beyond. And I really wasn't interested in the world of student loans.
Uh-huh.
And then it turned out I had some physician and pharmacist clients who had student loans, and I tried to find someone that I could refer them to.
I see.
And I couldn't find someone that I, trusted. I hate to say that, but there are a lot of unscrupulous companies and individuals out there, and I just couldn't find anybody. And so for one, this was a pharmacist, I got Smart just to help him with his loans. And he was brilliant, and he saved $100,000 because of the work we found.
Wow.
For you and others on the call that are smart, he was on a repayment plan that was an older plan, and he wasn't aware of the newer plan. And so that was how he made the huge savings in his repayment. But then I got very excited because I knew that I had 30 other clients with big student loans. And so emailed them all within 2 weeks. They'd all scheduled appointments. So then I knew, wow, this was a big topic for them.
Yeah.
And of those 30 brilliant people, only 3 had done everything correctly. And the others saved from $40,000 to $400,000 on their loans.
Wow.
And then I said, this is all I want to do, right? And so built the business, sold my book to my partner, and here we are 10 years later.
Wow. Yeah, you're so right. I mean, even as, smart healthcare professionals, it's incredibly difficult to navigate the student loan world, especially with all the changes, especially with the details of all the things you need to file. And even as a financial blogger, I feel like I'll have to constantly read to keep up. And it's important to know where to go when it comes to student loan management, because I have met with some financial planners in the past that, seem to only know kind of the basics, but weren't able to help me really navigate the journey as well as I really needed to. And it was a lot of calling the loan servicer and asking questions to people that really didn't know the details either,
That's true too, yes.
So yeah, it's so important to have someone on your side that knows exactly what to do. So in your experience, what are the common misconceptions? In your experience, what are the common misconceptions about student loan management among physicians?
I would say, the first thing that comes to mind is that physicians, because I shouldn't tell you what physicians are thinking. You can tell me, Disha. But sometimes I get the impression that because they're used to managing so many complex things within their patients' worlds, and within the healthcare system itself, that they often think that they can figure out these loans on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And in our experience, it's about 10% of the folks that we work with have everything perfectly fine, and the other 90% can use some help. And it's gotten worse over time because of, like you said earlier, the changes that are happening almost feels constantly.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be a big one. So making sure to get some good support on your student loans.
Mm-hmm.
The second would be trusting your loan servicing company. We had a nod to this already. But it's true that often the first person, if you call them, is someone maybe that's just been recently hired, or maybe someone that's worked with a lot of borrowers, but never with a doctor borrower.
Mm-hmm.
Very different because of the size of the loans.
Right.
And so, that's a common mistake we see, people getting bad information from their
Yeah,
loan servicing companies.
absolutely.
I'm trying to think of others. We sometimes see where a physician will talk to someone else, like in the clinic or in the hospital, and do whatever they did on their
Mm-hmm.
student loans. And sometimes that can work great. But sometimes, we say, like snowflakes, being here from Minnesota, every borrower is different.
Yeah.
And very true when it comes to the complex options around student loans.
Absolutely. There's so many nuances to this specific situation and, exactly what you want from life and what your plans are that it might change. What are some of the common mistakes you see doctors make? You said 90% seem to be off in some way.
They've missed something, something new usually. One of the things I wanted to make sure to cover today is, the new SAVE plan. Right?
Mm-hmm.
The new SAVE plan can be terrific. It is a federal program available
Mm-hmm.
for anyone with federal loans. And sometimes the problem we see related to SAVE is that what's great about it is if you pay your monthly payment, no additional interest will accrue.
Mm-hmm.
Pay your
That's
monthly
amazing.
payment, no additional interest will accrue.
Right. So no capitalized interest at the end of the month, which is amazing because I remember when I had student loans, I would be making income driven repayments. I was in income based at that time, and I would make my payment, but my total loan amount wouldn't really change,
Right.
and there'd be so much left over that I didn't actually pay, like accrue interest that was not paid at the end of the month,
Exactly.
and then at the end, or whatever, if there was an event that caused the capitalization of that interest, all of that interest then added on to my loan.
Right.
And I remember when I went into standard repayment, my total loan amount went up by $18,000. Um, and
Ouch, right? Ouch.
Yeah,
Yes.
ouch.
Mhm.
Right, from all that unpaid interest at the end of the month.
Right.
So yeah, incredibly great that the SAVE plan forgives basically going forward all the extra interest that you're not paying. You can get your payments quite low depending on your income, but at the end of that month and you make that payment, the rest of the interest that accrued that month gets forgiven. It's huge.
Exactly. And so one of the mistakes we sometimes see physicians making is, they might be on an older plan, like pay as you earn, for example.
Mm-hmm.
People that were on repay just got automatically switched to save, but people that were on pay or IBR didn't, but they
Mm-hmm.
hear that save is here and that the amount is lower. And
Mm-hmm.
so they might be tempted to switch without checking. And the
Right.
tricky thing about save is there's no maximum payment amount. There's no cap on that
Right.
payment amount. So potentially a high income earner might be paying more than they would need to on their loans under save.
Right. And that's an important caveat to remember because, if physicians are blessed with a high income, at least on paper, a W-2, especially if two physicians are married and they have a high household income, then your save payment could potentially be higher than what you would pay in the standard repayment plan because the save payment is based on the household MAGI, which is the modified adjusted gross income, which is, and there's a calculation there which is available on the Frugal Physician student loan cheat sheet but Joy can also help you with this if you're looking to see if save is really the right option for you and your family. Some people talk about married filing separately
Mm.
in order to get around the SAVE lack of payment cap. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. That's a really nice feature of the SAVE program. On the prior program, Repay, you couldn't file taxes separately and then just use that spouse's income when they were determining the payment amount. But now under SAVE, that is possible. That's just part of how the program runs. If you decide to file your taxes separately, they would count just your income when they determine what your monthly payment will be.
So that's really interesting. So you could potentially save a lot of money by filing separately from your spouse, and in order to try to lower your monthly payment and get your loans forgiven. So let's back up a little bit and talk about how we do federal income forgiveness, right? Because there are a couple of different ways of going about it, and I want to make sure we get it clear. So can you define the federal plans? I know a lot of people probably have heard of public service loan forgiveness. So that's one kind of forgiveness. And then there is the IDR forgiveness. Can you tell us about the difference between the two?
Be glad to. So glad we're talking about this. I think public service loan forgiveness has become almost common now, right? Lots of people are talking about it. Medical schools are helping to educate the students, and in residency, lots of information. And so public service loan forgiveness is the free federal program that's been around since 2007 that says if you have federal loans on an income-driven repayment plan or the standard plan, and you make 120 on-time monthly payments, the remaining balance will be forgiven. So the big thing to understand here is that you need to have qualifying employment. It needs to be full-time employment as defined, 30 hours per week, an average of 30 hours per week, with a nonprofit or a governmental or a tribal agency.
Okay.
There are a couple of allowances for people who are physicians, specifically who are working in states where the state doesn't allow the nonprofit healthcare system or clinic to directly employ a physician. In that case, they might be working for a private physician group. In those situations, they are still eligible for public service loan forgiveness.
So yeah, that's great. So we're talking 120 payments, so 10 years. So you get forgiveness. You make income-based, income-driven payments, I guess, throughout that 10-year period, and try to get your loans forgiven after 10 years of payment. So that's PSLF. And an important part of that is that it's tax-free as it's written, right? That forgiveness is tax-free. What about IDR?
Yep. So there is a 20 or 25-year income-driven repayment forgiveness, where after making 25 years of payments, the balance is canceled.
Right. Okay, so that balance is also forgiven. And that balance the forgiveness from that can be taxable. It was taxable, is currently not taxable due to COVID provisions until sometime in 2025. Right. But it can be taxable in the future. So if you are counting on that forgiveness after 2025, if nothing changes between now and then, it can be a taxable forgiveness. So the different IDR plans, it used to be pay, ICR, IBR, and repay. And now we talked about save. So tell us about what's happening to the other plans with the new student loan adjustments.
Yes, great. So it's important for people to know that if you're on save and you have a higher income and you think you'd like to get onto a plan that has a cap, there are two plans that have caps. Well, three, but two that are the lower. The formula makes the lower payment. And that would be pay as you earn. Everyone who's eligible, who has a partial financial hardship, meaning that their current their current income would mean that their pay payment is less than the standard 10-year plan. You can get on that today. But after July 1st, you cannot get on to pay. There'll be no more enrollments after July 1st for the pay-as-you-earn plan.
Okay.
Yep. And at that time, we're seeing a lot of folks think about the new IBR.
Mhm.
That's been around for a long time. We haven't talked about it for so long because it was pretty much inconsequential. There were better plans, but
Right.
now that plan it exists, and it will be continue to exist into the future. For that, you need to have your loans taken out only after 2014
Right.
and
Okay.
be
So
eligible.
to be eligible, they need to be new loans from 2014. Would a consolidation count as that new loan for
If they,
IBR?
only if the underlying loans were also since 2014.
I see. Okay. And does IBR, for IBR, do you need to prove partial financial hardship?
You do.
You do. Okay. And does it have a cap, payment cap?
It does. Yep.
It does. Okay. So Pay and IBR have payment caps,
And the
and
new IBR, which is
the
different
new
from
IBR, right?
regular IBR. So confusing.
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
And then Save does not. So we are talking about ways to lower your monthly payment here without and I guess maximizing the forgiveness if we're going for forgiveness,
Right.
right? Now, what if people were just wanting to pay their student loans off? What would they do?
Yeah. And then I'm going to say this out loud. So remind us to go back and talk about state taxation on forgiveness.
Oh,
Okay. Okay.
yes, right.
So if a person is going to pay off their loans rather than pursue any kind of forgiveness,
Hmm.
the primary consideration would be their interest rate,
Hmm.
right? Unless they're planning to pay it off like in a year, or like if they have a lump sum available and they're just going to pay it off, then it doesn't matter what the interest rate is.
Right.
But in the other scenario, usually people are shopping for interest rates
Hmm.
because they're trying to reduce their interest rate, which then will reduce their monthly payment and reduce what they pay overall. What
Right.
do you
So
have about this?
yeah. So, the interest rate by itself, getting lowered makes it very easy. Not very easy. It makes it easier for you to pay off your loans because obviously there's not as much interest accruing. I would have to do the calculations to see if the save plan, with the interest rate, the interest subsidy that you get by not accruing the interest, and I have to do the math to see if that might work better, might have worked better in my situation versus refinancing with a private lender. But basically the point is to try to go for the lowest interest rate. If you're planning on actually paying it all off with your hard-earned cash, then you get the lowest interest rate and just start making payments towards the principal, extra payments every month, so that it goes away. And that's what my family and I decided to do. And we, before the student loan, overhaul that has recently happened, that was the right move for us. And we paid it off in 17 months, which our
Wow.
plan, yeah, it was made. Yeah. And initially my interest rate was 7% with the feds. And getting it lowered to 3% really made
Oh,
a
very
humongous,
nice.
yeah, it was amazing. And it made a huge difference in how much money I had to pay back.
Yeah.
We saved a lot of money by just doing that. And then of course saving and taking the delta from our cash flow every month and just putting it towards the principal of my student loans. And and we shot for 3 years and actually paid it off in less than half of that. And that was once you get going and get motivated, it's easier to just when you have a specific goal in mind and you're willing to and able to pay off the loans, you certainly
Yeah.
have the ability to do that as well. And
Yeah.
there are pros and cons to both sides, pros and cons to trying to pursue forgiveness and trying to pay it off. For me, the pros were just freedom. I wanted time freedom, and I didn't want to be tied to working full time for a non-for-profit for 10 years in order to get the forgiveness. And I certainly didn't want to have my student loans hanging around for 20 to 25 years. So that was the right move for us. But yeah, if you are going for forgiveness, and it is a much better landscape right now to do that, because of the recent changes, because the government is really trying to make this a better experience for borrowers. It's not a bad way to go. And maybe, looking back, if the facts were on the ground what they are today, I might have gone for the PSLF. But let's talk about that taxation piece, because that's an important thing for people to keep in mind. We talked about how income-driven repayment plans, if you go for the 20 to 25-year forgiveness, then that can be taxable federally. What happens to the state taxes?
Right. In most states, it is also not taxable. But there are a handful of states, and it changes over time because state legislatures are, deciding on policy about this and whether they want to mirror the federal tax rules on this. But there are still a handful of states where the forgiveness amount is considered as income. It's in your Maggie. And so then it is taxable. So that is something that every physician needs to check. To make sure whether or not in their state that amount is taxable or not.
Can you give us some examples of states? I mean, obviously, I don't expect you to list all the states off the top of your head, but some examples of high tax states that might, or are they all high tax states?
They're not all high tax states. I'm speaking to you from Minnesota, and in the last couple of years, ours has switched, and so it is no longer taxable. Off the top of my head, Disha, I can't tell you which other states are. There are 5 or 7, I think.
I see.
But if someone wants to send me to email, we'll send a quick list out to you afterwards.
Okay, sounds good. And maybe we can just cut that question out.
Okay. Good.
Okay.
So the other thing I wanted to think about in terms of taxability is, I'm a big public policy geek. And so I was wondering, when are they going to take up the federal tax rule related to the long-term IDR forgiveness? And what we've learned is that they never talk about this until the actual situation is happening. So we're not expecting to see the end of that forgiveness until the end of those COVID regulations next year or the next. And so that's when we're going to start seeing federal legislators, senators, and representatives talking about this.
Extending it or not.
There's a big coalition of folks working on it, mostly through the Preserve PSLF coalition. Some of those folks lobby on both sides. So there'll be lots happening around it, and potentially we could use some help from physicians' voices too. So stay tuned.
Yeah. So you mentioned I want to clarify, you said some forgiveness may be taxable in some states. Are we talking both PSLF and IDR forgiveness?
We are, sadly. Something that is not talked about a lot.
Right. So even PSLF forgiveness can be taxable in certain states.
True.
That's huge. So if you get $400,000 in student loans forgiven, which is happening quite often right now, then all $400,000 of that is counted as income for that year.
That's
and then that physician might get taxed at the state tax rate, which would be as high as 9%, like in New York. Oh, yeah. That's a big tax bill.
Need to be ready for it. It's still, when we run the numbers with folks, it often turns out it's still worth it. Right.
Okay.
From numbers perspective, but you want to be ready for it, right?
Right. That's a very big surprise bill to get at the end of the year. Right. If you're not prepared for it. So as we're going talking about forgiveness and trying to minimize your payments, it's also important to remember that you are trying to lower your monthly payments. That's the strategy, right? If you're trying to get forgiveness, obviously you're going to put in your time working. You might as well try to maximize your forgiveness, but you need to be prepared for the tax consequences for that year when you get that forgiveness. And that's why it's so important for every family to kind of run that by a professional, make sure they are ready for it. And then bank that extra money that you are not spending on your student loans and put it away in a savings account, in a retirement account, in just a brokerage account. Put it aside and and let it grow, because then that can help you cover this huge bill that you're going to get from the taxes potentially. So it's important to plan your savings out too, and not inflate your lifestyle to the very limit, and just try to make those student loan payments. It's important to be prepared.
Disha, you're so frugal. I love that about you.
Some people do call me frugal. Yeah.
I'm thinking you're astute is what it would be.
I mean, I think unfortunately things change, and if anyone's lived long enough, you know that promises are one thing, and good intentions are one thing, but reality sometimes changes, and and rules change, and the ability and the people in the leadership change, and their ability or desire to make the student loan world a better place changes, right? And so a lot of this depends on who's making the decisions and what kind of decisions they're making, and then of course life changes, right? You might want to pay off your loans, so it's nice to have that, what we call a PSLF side fund, or in this case, and now with Save, just an IDR side fund to have sitting there growing to give you options, right? Because money management's really in the end all about giving yourself options.
Yeah, so true. So true. I have something else that's come to mind about IDR and public service loan forgiveness. Can we slip that in here too?
Yes.
Okay. So it's the buyback program. We're starting to get some questions about the buyback program. And I haven't heard a lot of people talking about it. So maybe this would be a nice topic for our next, maybe this would be a nice topic to discuss.
Yeah, let's touch on that. I haven't heard of it. So please tell me about the buyback program.
So let's say that you're pursuing public service loan forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you have federal loans. Let's say that you're at 120 payments. You've made your 120th payment according to your calculations.
Mm-hmm.
And let's fast forward a little bit. This is after they've done the IDR account adjustment. So let's say it's like September this year. You've made your 120th payment. You're like, oh, so excited. And then you send in your employment certification digital form, and it comes back and says, oh, you only have 118 because those two were actually forbearances, 2 months of forbearance that didn't get captured and turned into qualifying payments under the IDR account adjustment.
Oh,
You could buy those 2 payments back.
Oh, really?
Pretty cool. I like, so logical. I love what they're doing right now at the Department of Education. And let's say that right now your monthly payment is like $2,500. But when that forbearance happened, it might have been during residency. And so the rule is you have to buy back the payment at the amount of what the plan amount was back then, or back
that's nice.
The situation was.
Yeah.
And so in either case, you do the calculation, you'd be like, well, 2 payments at $2,500, that's $5,000 versus 2 payments at whatever it was. Usually as time goes on, we make more money, right? And so likely if it was a prior forbearance, it was with a smaller payment amount. So typically it hasn't happened yet, but a person needs to have made the 120 payments, and then there's an application to apply for the buyback, and then to send in your money.
Oh, that's great.
So yeah, could be helpful for a few people.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine that would help a lot of doctors out there that might have been put into administrative forbearance, or just didn't know what they were doing or whatever back in the day when they were younger, and now they do, and if they want to just bank those payments. Wow, it's an amazing option.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the IDR recount, or touch on that, because we're coming up on the deadline at the end of this month, and I think this podcast is going to go live before the deadline. So please tell us about that.
Great. So yes, there is an IDR account adjustment. It's a goofy title. What it really means is that the Department of Education is going to do a recount of everyone's student loan payments, and they're going to credit people, for the months of forbearance, for the months of miscounting by your loan servicing company. People are going to get a new count of potentially qualifying payments, either for the long-term IDR forgiveness or for public service loan forgiveness.
Okay.
So pretty exciting. But but especially for the folks that might be listening who went to medical school back in the 90s, or maybe are related to somebody that went to medical school in the 90s or a colleague of them. Do you know what student loan interest rates were back then?
Oh God, I think they were somewhere like around 1% or something, right?
Exactly,
Oh,
exactly. 1 and
so nice.
2%. It was beautiful. And so a lot of the advice back then was repay your loans on the 30-year plan.
Yeah,
Right? Because you could get a better return anywhere else, even in
yeah,
a savings account at that time.
right.
And so people did. And so there are folks that have been paying for 25 and more years, and they still have a loan balance. It's not a big balance. Typically, it's usually, we've seen 100,000, 50,000, 12,000, not a lot. And listen to us, not a lot, comparatively.
Right.
And if those folks have made 25 years of payments, they're done paying and they might not know. So please help us get the word out. There's typically one thing they need to do, and that's to apply for a direct consolidation loan with the federal government, because these are typically the older loans that aren't eligible for forgiveness. And so you need to apply for the direct consolidation loan to make them eligible, the loan type eligible.
Okay. Yeah.
Doesn't take much
Huge.
time or effort, but people need to know about it.
Yeah. I mean, sure. If you have, $50,000 or whatever, $25,000, it's not peanuts, especially to primary care physicians, right? So if you can get that forgiven, like, why not? Please do it. The important thing is, like Joy mentioned, these older loans, FFEL loans, the direct student loan was a more recent title that these student loans got. They were directly from the federal government before they were coming from private companies. So those older FFEL loans have to be consolidated into direct federal loans. And we're talking consolidation, not refinance. We're talking staying with the federal government, not going to a private company, because it's the federal government that's offering this program to basically recount your payments. You can consolidate them now. And then you will, if you've already made that 25-year mark on your payments, then the rest of your loans could be forgiven, right? Huge.
Very exciting. And
Yeah.
it's not related to employment. You could be retired. You could be working in your own clinic. You could be working part-time or hardly at all. It's not related to employment. It's just the fact you have a federal loan you've been paying on for 25 years.
Right. Huge. And the deadline is at the end of this month. Okay. And it hasn't been extended
For the consolidation, correct.
to apply for the consolidation. So do it now, look into it now. Remember, you might lose your interest rate subsidy at that low interest rate for a short amount of time. So
it'll be a weighted average. So it might go up by a 1/100%, but it won't be to current rates.
Okay.
Thankfully
Good to
not.
know.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's say it was at 2% and 3%, they had a couple of loans, it would be at 2.5%, for example.
Okay.
Simple.
So not terrible.
Yeah.
But yes, it might change your interest rate a little bit, but important to run the numbers and make sure you come out ahead. Also important to remember the tax implications. While this forgiveness is tax-free currently, federally, it might be taxable in your state. So important to know what that would mean for your tax bill. As we're talking about taxes, I wanted to touch on the topic of saving for retirement and student loan plans. We talked about how married filing separately might be advantageous for folks that are trying to maximize their forgiveness, and minimize their payment, so that if they have a high earning spouse, that their income is excluded from the student loan payment calculations. If you're so a lot of residents now are starting to invest in Roth IRAs, which is kind of the standard advice. Get started early. A Roth IRA is a very good way to do it, because as a resident, you are still making you're still not making enough to have to do the backdoor Roth, and you're still under the income threshold to do a direct Roth IRA contribution. So go ahead and start doing that. Is that still a good idea for people trying to minimize their payments, student loan payments? Would it be more advantageous for them to do a pre-tax retirement contribution if they have a 401k or 403b available to them?
Love this question. Very good. Well, first of all, kudos to anyone who's thinking about doing this. The sooner we start, right, the better off we are in the end. Your future self will be so happy that you did either one of those. Really.
Right. It's true. Either way, you're going to be good. But we, if you're filing separately, there could be implications to your eligibility for the Roth IRA contribution too. So yeah, first let's talk about, why would you consider one or the other, and then the details on that.
Yep. So any pre-tax contribution, like to your 401k or 403b, for example, would reduce your adjusted gross income. And as you mentioned earlier, the adjusted gross income is what the Department of Ed uses to calculate your income-driven payment. So the more you can reduce that, the better you are. So off you are. So by retirement saving, not the Roth, because that's a post-tax contribution,
Right.
but to your 403b, or you might have a pre-tax HSA, or any one, or for childcare, sometimes there's a special pre-tax account you can contribute to from your employer's end.
Yeah.
All of those will reduce your adjusted gross income, and that will reduce your payment amount.
Yeah. So that would be, that's a way to further lower your monthly payments on an income-driven plan, and hopefully get more forgiveness. So that's something to consider. I think that's not talked about enough in the student loan space, is that if you are going for the maximum forgiveness and you're married filing separately, pre-tax contributions might make sense for you. Again, you're still saving for retirement. You're
Right.
just doing it in a different way.
Yeah.
And an important caveat to remember is that if you are filing separately, but you've lived with your spouse for any amount of time during the year, that you're not eligible for the Roth IRA anymore if you make more than $10,000 a year. So most residents are making more than $10,000 a year. So it's very important to know that you're not actually eligible. So a lot of people, I can see people just doing a Roth IRA as a resident and filing separately and not realizing, right, that they're not eligible, then having to go back and recharacterize those payments. And that's kind of a pain. It's probably not, it's not the end of the world. It's a fixable mistake, but it's important to know that if you do want to do Roth contributions or Roth IRA contributions as a resident and you're filing separately, then you would have to do it through the backdoor method, which is still legal, and you're okay to doing that. So you have to contribute it to a traditional account and then convert it to Roth. Okay. So that's what attendings generally have to do. But residents should also remember this. But probably if you're doing married filing separately to try to lower your payments, then you're probably also going to want to do pre-tax contributions if you have that space available.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I wanted to mention that because I recently wrote an article about it based on we did a student loan webinar together, and I did another webinar, and this question came up, and I'm so glad somebody brought this up because it's an important thing for people to know.
Yeah, very important. And the details, right, makes a person's head spin. So it's great to have great information like you just wrote about that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I know the details. It's and this is why we need professionals in our lives, right? So that this is the reason that getting your individual situation looked at by a professional is so important, because while we get garden variety kind of everyone, this is generally good for everyone, there are always caveats. It might be caveats that I don't know about your situation, so always good.
That's true.
Yeah. All right. Well,
can I add one more thing?
Yeah.
Keep rolling. So already that there's been all this trouble around recertification of income-driven repayment plans. And that the federal government said that no one had to recertify. But the loan servicing company, who has been servicing everyone who's pursuing public service loan forgiveness, said, yes, it was time to recertify. And so a lot of physicians especially had really big payment jumps, and it was against the rules.
Yes.
Right? So we were like pulling our hair out trying to, help people get back to their original payment amount. And finally, the federal government said, you must do it differently. And so MOHELA was forced to reevaluate. And so there might be doctors out there who were forced to recertify their income-driven repayment plan. So if anyone has done this since COVID, you actually can get that reversed. So part of the fix, this just happened in the last couple of weeks, is that you could call the loan servicing company, ask to have that reversed, ask to have your prior payment amount reinstated, and they will actually reimburse you the overpayments you've made.
Oh, wow. Even if you're not eligible for forgiveness yet, they're
Right.
just going to reimburse you.
Right.
Well, that's huge.
It is.
So we're talking, people that I'm assuming this will highly impact people that were residents and are just new attendings and had a huge
Exactly.
jump in their pay.
Exactly.
Wow. And that could be huge to go from a $300, $400 payment to a $2,500 payment. That's huge for a new attending who's also trying to save up for probably a new house
Right.
and starting with kids and all of that. A lot of big expenses during that time in your life. And so that could make a huge difference in people's lives.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Joy. I really appreciate you bringing that up.
You're welcome.
All right. Any other new changes we should know about before we let you go today?
I'm also thinking about, folks have probably heard from MOHELA and the Department of Ed that if they're pursuing public service loan forgiveness, that the Department of Ed is taking that away from the responsibilities that MOHELA has held. I think because of all the errors that we've been seeing.
Yeah.
And so there will be a pause from May till June of this year where that changeover happens. And so I think for anyone that's getting close to forgiveness or hasn't turned in an employment certification digital form yet, if you have a minute, you might want to do that before the end of April at studentaid.gov/PSLF, just to get that digital verification of your employment in before there'll be a 2-month pause where they'll not be doing anything related to counting of qualifying payments for PSLF.
Yeah. If the rollout of the federal student loan takeover is anywhere like the healthcare marketplace, it might be a rough transition.
It might be.
Well, I hope it's not for the sake of everyone that has student loans. But I think, like Joy said, this might be a good time to get those certifications in so that you can just get your ducks in a row before the transition happens. So you have, the receipts that you need, the certifications that you need, and just so your situation is settled before it transitions. I think it's a good idea just in case things don't go well.
Agreed. And then keep your receipts.
Yeah. Yeah. Should they be downloading like all of their documentation
I
from
would.
MOHELA just in case?
I would, yeah. Or take screenshots of the website showing your number of qualifying payments. Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, because that web interface is most likely going to go away as well.
Correct.
Well, Joy, thank you so much. It's been so enlightening to have you talk about student loans here, and I hope this will help our listeners. I know it will. And you've shared so many nuggets of wisdom today. I know there are probably 5,000 other things to be talked about, and especially in individual situations, there could be other things that could be affecting the advice we give them. So how can people get in touch with you if they want you to go over their individual situation with them?
Oh, thanks. Absolutely. Go to our website, navigatestudentloans.com. Click on schedule a call. That goes right to our calendar. We do a free 15-minute discovery session. Can answer any questions quickly there, give you a sense of what else we could help you with if that's something you'd like. So please schedule a time. We'd love to talk to you and really honor that you might trust us to do that.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Joy. I really appreciate you sharing that. And before I let you go, I have to ask you, when's your next fishing trip?
Well, I've already been fishing this year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, pretty exciting. We got skunked, as my grandpa would say. We didn't see a fish.
Oh.
But I was with the teenage grandsons who just wanted to go out. And so we did. And it was fabulous. It was fabulous. But yeah, no fish yet, but hopefully soon.
Wonderful. We're taking my boys out to the Adirondacks this summer and teaching them how to fish. Teaching me how to fish too, because I've never been. I'm so excited. It's going to be a week of just disconnecting from all. There's no internet reception there. There are no screens. I'm so excited. It's going to be so peaceful.
That'd be wonderful. Oh, you got to tell me how it goes.
I will. I'll see how long we survive without pulling out the Nintendo Switches.
There you go.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, and you guys please go and check out Navigate's website if you have any further questions or you want to get in touch with Joy. And thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for taking up the topic today.
Absolutely.
Okay, take care.
Bye.
The content shared on this podcast should not be taken as individualized financial advice. We are here to share our knowledge and experiences, but it is crucial to consult with professionals such as accountants, financial advisors, or attorneys who can provide personalized guidance based on your specific needs.